Good evening again, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to the presentation of Philosophy Now's Awards for contributions in the fight against stupidity. Is the sound okay, by the way? Can everybody hear me?
Very clear, very clear.
Great, that's splendid. Well, first I'll tell you about the awards, and then I'll tell you why we're giving them as we are this year. Okay, well, we started giving this award every year in 2011, and the thinking behind it was this, that one of the greatest and most widespread problems in the world is the problem of stupidity. By this, I don't mean the problem of people lacking intelligence or intellectual capacity. That's not what it's about at all. I mean the problems of people failing to reason well, or getting stuck in a mental rut, or relying on false, unexamined assumptions. So in these respects, all of us are stupid sometimes. I'm stupid on a regular basis. Philosophy is very much to do with finding out our own mental mistakes, with identifying and testing and correcting our own assumptions and procedures of thought. And the more you do philosophy, hopefully, the more you develop the good mental habit of examining your own assumptions. Aristotle talked about developing the virtues by practicing them. So you develop the virtue of examining your own assumptions and examining whether what you're doing in terms of reasoning is sound. So from that point of view, just doing philosophy ought to be good in terms of avoiding stupidity. Talking of Aristotle, in the very first session today, at 10 o'clock in the morning, Gerald Jones was talking about Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and the distinction that Aristotle makes between theoretical reason and practical reason. Theoretical reason having to do with theorizing and trying to grasp the big picture of our lives and of the world, trying to understand things at a rather theoretical level. Practical reason to do with getting through our everyday lives successfully and well. When I talked in the past about the problems of stupidity, the examples I tend to fall upon are mostly theoretical ones. Scientists who for a long time sometimes overlook something, and then when there is a realization of what they've been overlooking, they go, oh, how could we have been so stupid? Like Niels Bohr said when he was told about the splitting of the atom by Meitner and Frisch. Said, oh, how could we have been so stupid? We never thought of that before. That's what's going on. But actually, if you develop these good mental habits of examining your own underlying assumptions, this should also, in theory, be good in terms of practical reason too, in terms of making less stupid mistakes in our own lives. I'm not completely convinced by that, but anyway, that would be nice to think that is the case. Anyway, this is why stupidity is a human problem to which philosophy is particularly relevant. It's very much what philosophy is about, is combating stupidity. And that's why we created this series of awards for people who have made particularly great contributions in helping all of us to combat stupidity in different ways. Some of the awards we've given in previous years have been for helping us to see the world more clearly in one way or another. Or to combat various deep-rooted causes of institutional stupidity in the world. Others have been for encouraging people generally to cultivate better mental habits, to think more clearly, to fool themselves less often. Now, in 2016 we gave the award to the philosopher Peter Singer. Then in 2017 we had a schedule change. Instead of holding the festival at the end of 2017, we decided in conjunction with our hosts, Conway Hall, to hold it near the beginning of 2018 instead, and here you all are. This means that we're giving the 2017 award now, and also the 2018 award as well. So, doing this in the chronological order, first, the winner of the 2017 award for contributions in the fight against stupidity is, as Anya already mentioned, a magician, James Randi. So many of you may be familiar with James Randi, a professional stage magician for many years, who during his years as a magician went under the stage name The Amazing Randy, and he found that his interests developed over time towards seeing how other people pulled off amazing looking stunts, and in particular his attention was caught by purported professional psychics and faith healers in particular, and he then became what he called an investigator, looking at how they were doing the things they were doing, and as he was seeing it, practicing various forms of professional deceit, fooling people, but not so much for the sake of entertainment, but for the sake of enrichment. And eventually, after doing this in very entertaining ways for years, he created the James Randi Foundation, promising to give $1 million to someone who could demonstrate psychic or supernatural powers under controlled conditions, monitored by himself. He never had to give the $1 million prize. I think it stood for about 15 years. But in case any of you were thinking of it, that's no longer available as an option, I think. We decided to give James Randi this prize. I'll say more about our reasoning later on. Very unfortunately, James Randi had a stroke in October. Not only is he not able to fly over from the States for the award, but also we thought, well, he's not even going to be able to record an acceptance speech. He very much wanted to. He said, no, it's not possible. And then, very much at the last minute, it turned out he had managed to get something together, and he sent it over just a couple of days ago. It's very short, it's made under very trying conditions, and really a testament to his persistence and so on, and we're delighted that he was able to send that over. So, in agreement with James Randi, we're first going to play you a clip, a lengthy clip for about 15 minutes from a documentary he made about his work with the James Randi Foundation. Then I'll say a few more words about why we're giving him the award, and then we'll play you the short acceptance video which he has sent over. First of all, could I ask you to play the clip from the documentary, which should, with a bit of luck, come up on the screen here.
From the earliest days, man has believed that dreams and the supernatural are in some way real. All over the world, psychics demonstrate powers that their followers accept as modern-day miracles. Here in Moscow, psychic healers treat the sick with chants and incantations. And in the Philippines, psychic surgeons perform operations without knives. A metal spoon turns liquid in the hands of a psychic performer in Britain.
Yes, it's happening. It's happening.
Nearly everywhere, fortune tellers find the future in cards, crystal balls, and palms. 3 out of 4 Americans say they've had a psychic experience. Today, you can even find a psychic at the mall. Purveyors of the supernatural have created a multi-million-dollar industry. But are psychic phenomena what they appear to be. My name is James Randi, the amazing Randi. I'm a magician.
Okay, I have here
For the past 25 years, I've been investigating the claims of psychics.
a psychokinetic demonstration of a supernatural nature. Watch this.
Psychics often say that an object can be moved using only the power of the mind.
And it moves in a miracle fashion like that. Isn't that amazing? Stop. Stop.
Magicians can produce the same effect. Of course, I was just blowing on the pen. But a little suggestion and a little distraction go a long way. As a magician, there's nothing I like more than a well-executed illusion. Just look at what my friend Jamie Ian Swiss can do. But there are those who use magic tricks for more than entertainment. They convince people that what they do is real, that they have special powers. The magical thinking, is a slippery slope. Sometimes it's harmless enough, but other times it's quite dangerous. Personally, I'm opposed to that kind of fakery, so I have no reservations at all about exposing these people and their illusions for what they really are. I've investigated the claims of hundreds of psychics. People aren't always happy with my conclusions, but I do have my supporters. In 1986, I was honored with the Macarthur Award. Unfortunately, most of the prize money went into defending myself against a series of libel suits related to one of my earliest and most controversial investigations. The subject was Uri Geller, a young Israeli who claimed to have supernatural powers.
His remarkable affinity for metal and his psychic abilities are well documented all over the world.
In the early 1970s, Geller became a superstar, the most famous psychic in the world.
Okay, just look at me. Visualize everything that you drew once more.
He claimed to read people's minds.
I'm gonna show what I got, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but it really came very strongly. It could be two mountains with a round thing on, or two people.
Can I share?
Yeah, am I wrong?
You're right.
I'm wrong. That's what I got. Oh, that's...
He claimed to bend keys with his mind.
I know you're going to think this is a setup, friends, and old Tom has never conned you on anything. This guy is bending this key by rubbing it. Was bent at about a 1 degree angle when you started out, and it's coming up on 45 degrees now and still moving. You thinking bend? Is that what you're
Yes,
doing?
I'm saying bend.
You think bend?
Yes.
Hard, soft?
No, I'm saying bend, and sometimes I say bend.
But Geller was best known for his way with spoons.
Hold the tip of the spoon very, very gently.
Okay.
What I'm doing is I'm trying to melt the metal down. Yes, you see, I feel it.
It's
This is
going.
getting loose.
Yeah.
And there's no force at all in my hands. Yes, look what's happening.
There's no force at all.
Look, the whole, you see, the whole
thing
thing
tries to fall off.
It's, touch it here where I'm stroking it, there's absolutely no...
I have a wisdom tooth.
If you can say it, the metal is beginning to crack here.
It's breaking.
Yeah, see, look, it's becoming, it's like a puddle lapse. See, look, and keep stroking it here. You see the, don't, you see the crack is becoming bigger.
Yeah.
I melt the metal down, so I don't want you to bend, I just say bend.
You melt it.
See, now wait a minute, keep stroking your keys more, and people at home, want your watches to start working, or if there is a radio that is broken, want it to start working. Television broken, just wanted all those broken things. Now,
What Geller was saying, effectively, was that wanting things could make them so.
who started working?
I felt that claim had to be challenged. The media, even some scientists, were taking the Geller phenomena seriously. So I decided to show, for starters, that I could at least duplicate these effects using trickery. Now, a key can be displayed in such a way that it looks like it's bending. For example, just by stroking it, you'd swear that it's bending right up before your eyes. Magicians call this process ratcheting. But to do this, the key has to be bent in advance. The hard part, of course, is how to go about bending the key without letting them catch you. Now, there are several ways. I could, for example, take it and press the tip against the top of the table. That would do it. Or, in shifting my chair backwards or forwards, as I just did, I could have taken it and dropped it below the level of the table and pressed the tip on the chair I'm sitting on, which is exactly what I just did. Did I fool you? Mentalists have been duplicating hidden drawings for years. If Mr. Geller had chosen to use trickery, he could have used any of a number of techniques. One favorite involves turning your back and covering your eyes while the drawing is being made. Now, I've always wondered why you would cover your eyes while your back is turned. But melting metal is something else again. It's done something like this. And it gets soft. So I say to it, bend, 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 and it bends. Of course, it does take a little preparation. In fact, it takes a lot of preparation. Now, this isn't proof positive that other demonstrations aren't the result of supernatural power, but isn't this a more reasonable explanation? And then, of course, there was Mr. Geller's appearance on The Tonight Show. I got a call after they booked him to appear.
Would you welcome, please, Uri Geller.
Johnny had been a magician himself and was skeptical. I was asked to help prevent any trickery.
Nice to see you.
Thanks.
We have only met.
This scares me.
This scares you? Well, this is good. We just got some things together here.
I told them to provide their own props and not to let Geller or his people anywhere near them.
Also, one of our staff members did some drawings which have been sealed in an envelope. And I'd like you to take your own pace when you feel like you want to try anything. Do you want to try that particular experiment first?
Well, no, feel free.
When you're ready? Sure.
We'll start eliminating the ones that do not have the water.
All right, without touching them.
He is really suspicious, you know. I'm having a hard time with you.
Okay, I don't mean to be, right? I really won't.
Just keep looking. Okay, let me rest here, all right?
All right.
You know, I'm surprised because before this program, the producer came and he read me at least 40 questions you're going to ask me.
Well, I can ask you all kinds of questions if you'd like to ask you questions.
I have to have time.
John, we're back. Your Uri was telling me you don't feel what, strong tonight? Is
I feel
that
strong. It's not all tonight. Right now I'm feeling being pressed and then I can't.
Well, I'm not trying to press you. I really not.
No, you're only telling me, well, will you try that one?
Well, I thought that was the idea of no, I'm not trying to put you down.
Much to my surprise, the Tonight Show episode didn't have much effect on Uri Geller's career. Neither did the book that I wrote about him. But eventually, his star faded. Why people are so drawn to the irrational is something that has always puzzled me. I want to be, if I can, as sure of the world, the real world around me, as is possible. Now, you can only attain that to a certain degree, but I want the greatest degree of control. I've never involved myself in narcotics of any kind. I don't smoke, I don't drink, because that can easily just fuzz the edges of my rationality, fuzz the edges of my reasoning powers, and I want to be as aware as I possibly can. That means giving up a lot of fantasies that might be comforting in some ways, but I'm willing to give that up in order to live in an actually real world, as close as I can get to it. During the 1980s, I entered a world that I found filled with fantasy and rife with abuse. The world of fake humor. I developed a special interest in a television evangelist named Peter Popoff.
God told me, he said, you smite that cancer with your fist.
At the time, Popoff was pulling in nearly $4 million a year, healing people on his miracle crusades.
You got cancer in the stomach? Are you ready for God to burn that cancer out? Here it goes in the mighty. Devil, back off. Back off, devil! Hallelujah! Hallelujah! You really believe you're healed?
Yes.
You think your cancers are gone now?
Yes, I believe that because God never lies and we stand with His word. Praise the Lord.
I'll tell you from now on, you're going to have a song of victory in your heart. Amen.
To his followers, Popoff seemed to have divine powers.
Is it Gould? Alice Gould?
He knew their names,
Stand up, Alice.
as well as the afflictions they'd come to cure.
God is touching that thyroid condition right now. God is touching your nerves right now. God is touching your eyes. Just lift up your hands, get ready. Here it comes.
He also knew the personal details of their lives.
Hear good news from Charles. Before everything is over, I'll tell you he's going to be completely delivered because of your prayers, because of your faith. Here it comes, complete healing in Jesus. Oh, mighty name right now, right now, right now. Amen. It's all right to praise the Lord.
I suspected that Popoff's revelations were other than divine. A radio scanner we brought to the hall picked up a decidedly worldly source.
Hello, Petey, can you hear me? If you can't, you're in trouble.
Popoff was being prompted by his wife through a wireless earpiece.
John?
Julie Johnson.
She'd gotten her information from prayer cards filled out by the faithful before the show began.
She has to get rid of the walker.
You want to get rid of this walker, sister? Oh, glory. How long have you been walking on that walk?
About 3 years.
3 years.
She lives at 1627 10th Street.
1627 10th Street? Is that right?
That's right.
She has arthritis all over.
Burning this arthritis right out of your body. Take a few steps just to make the devil mad. Hallelujah. That's it. Just move around a little bit. There she goes. Just walk with me. Oh, glory to God. She's not going to need that walker anymore. God's just putting new strength, new health. Burning that arthritis out of her body. Just keep going. Hallelujah.
I was
Hallelujah.
able to arrange for another broadcast of the Miracle Crusade on The Tonight Show, but this time the wireless prompting was included. In 1987, Peter Popoff declared bankruptcy.
Greater is He. Greater is He.
Okay. Oops. Could we have the sound back? Hello. Ah, yes, there we are. Okay. See what Randy's doing there. He's not saying that the psychics are stupid. In fact, he thinks they're very sharp. He's not saying that their audiences are particularly stupid, because their audiences are people not particularly unlike ourselves. We can laugh at the things that they were fooled by, but who knows what we can be fooled by. Randi says in another documentary, he says that every stage magician knows about 2 human characteristics which are pretty much universal. The first is the ability of people to be fooled, and second is the willingness of people to fool themselves. Both of these characteristics are on display in what you've just seen. And these are the reasons that we are giving James Randi the award for 2017. for so entertainingly reminding us repeatedly and in great detail about these two characteristics which are present in all of us. So here is the award, and we'll now play James Randi's acceptance video. Whoops, sorry. Which, I'm so sorry about this. Acceptance video, which is filmed by his husband, Davy Penner. I was given to understand beforehand that really the most that James Randi would be able to manage was just to say thank you very much. But it turned out he did a lot more than that. And in fact, he's back from hospital, he's recovering, and he's come back swinging. And in the award you can see he's having a go at a doctor on television in the States who has aroused his irritation or amusement by his interest in various forms of alternative therapy. We'll play the whole thing now. Made under very difficult and trying circumstances by James Randi, and we thank him for his perseverance.
Hello. Please pardon me for reading this from a script. I know that's a strange thing for me to do, but I find it necessary. Now, there's a fully accredited medical doctor who appears frequently on NBC television as one of their major consultants. That's a major TV channel in the United States. I'm speaking of Dr. Mehmet Oz. No jokes about his name, please, with either a Z or a Z, whichever you prefer. Dr. Oz is a cardiothoracic surgeon who has doctors prancing about in his operating room while he actually operates on living patients. Quote, evening out their human aura, close quote, for them as they're laid out for serious cardiac surgery. Now, TV star Oprah Winfrey, who accepts all of this sort of thing, every kind of quackery, bought this man a full-time position with this prominent TV channel here in the USA, his very own show. Dr. Oz calls Reiki, another sort of very popular quackery, quote, the most important alternative medicine of all. Wow. He explained to his nationwide audience that his wife sometimes uses Reiki on him and he doesn't even feel it. Remarkable, don't you think? Researchers at the U.S. National Library of Medicine concluded that the serious medical and reporting limitations of existing Reiki studies preclude a definitive conclusion on its effectiveness, close quote. Okay, translation? Well, we just don't know, and probably are never going to know, nor ever even try to find out. This man and his Reiki practitioners describe their art as, quote, both a harmonizing energy and a non-invasive therapy which involves placing your hands in a series of locations in or near the body. In other words, it's quackery. The definition of Reiki says that it's, quote, energy that flows through the body of the practitioner, conveyed through the hands into the body of the recipient. It's a subtle energy, but it can be felt. Any particular effects cannot be predicted. This energy is intelligent and will do whatever is best. It will help any condition, close quote. I'm prepared to give the JRF $1 Million Prize to any Reiki practitioner who can pass such a test. No one, including Dr. Mehmet Oz, has ever applied for this prize. I have to ask, why not? Oz preaches every sort of alternative medicine that comes to his admiring attention. He also believes in and promotes energy fields and therapeutic touch, and he parades psychics and homeopaths on his TV show. To quote him, "We're beginning now to understand things they do which we know in our hearts are true, but we could never measure. The next big frontier in medicine is energy medicine," close quotes. This is simply throwing around terms that sound applicable but are so poorly defined that they depend entirely upon general meanings and not on specifics. Dr. Oz has also expressed his dedicated belief in the philosophy of the Swedish mystic Emanuel Swedenborg, one of the most prominent early woo-woo nuts, who said he'd been appointed by God to reform Christianity. Sounds like a big job. He said that his eyes and mind had been opened so wide, from then on he could freely visit heaven and hell and converse with angels and demons and other spirits. For the rest of his life, this self-labeled savant wrote and published 18 theological works in which he described how he had discussed various matters with spirits from all of the planets in our solar system and beyond, in English, since they were all Christians, of course. It has also not escaped my attention that L. Frank Baum's wonderful Wizard of Oz, a great story, was eventually admitted to being a total humbug. Just a passing observation for which I beg forgiveness. My faith in the media, as well as in alternative medicine, is still at a very low point. In 2005, I'd been brought before the ABC TV American broadcasting cameras to meet Dr. Oz, who I found had written on hypnosis, therapeutic touch, guided imagery, Reiki, reflexology, prayer, energy medicine, aromatherapy, yoga, and all of which he preferred to refer to as global medicine. Is it any wonder that I rather doubt the ability of Dr. Oz to properly observe such matters? Dr. Oz, you could have learned a lot from me during our encounter, but you turned it down. On that ABC TV show, Dr. Oz came up with this comment on a forceps in the nose stunt, often used by the quacks. Said he, and I quote, "I wonder if touching the pituitary gland may influence all these chemicals that go between body and brain." Close quote. You have to wonder, don't you? Incredible. Oz was groping around to save this carnival, stunned by invoking such a remote, unlikely notion that forceps pushed into a victim's nostril might produce some useful effect. No, strike that. It's not unlikely, it's just impossible. Folks, I was asked to prepare a much more extensive text to be used here, but I'm really not quite up to it, so please forgive me. I am reasonably and deeply moved by the honor you have placed before me, and I accept it with great enthusiasm, believe me. Please don't think I'm not willing to spend more time preparing this document. I am, but I don't have the strength to do so presently. Quite possibly I will be able to enlarge on my views of quackery and the unwillingness of experts to react to my comments. And possibly I may be able to actually visit you in person and closer to home on another occasion. Yes, I repeat, I am deeply moved by this honor, and I thank each and every one of you, sincerely. James, the amazing Randi.
I'm now going to pass the stage to Anya Steinbach for the 2018 award.
Could you put the PowerPoint up? Fantastic. Okay, great. So the 2018 award for contributions in the fight against stupidity goes to Professor Robert Sapolsky, John A. and Cynthia Freigang, Professor of Neurology and of Neurosurgery in the Biology Department at Stanford University. I'm very mindful of the fact that Professor Sapolsky has already very patiently waited on the line to speak to us a little bit for about 3/4 of an hour, so I'm going to keep my remarks very, very short indeed. Human behavior, well, who wouldn't be interested in it? Of course we all are. Philosophers are very interested in human behavior, and philosophers have ways of trying to account for human behavior. This is especially when we talk about ethics and we talk about motivation, that is moral motivation in the mean, but of course, moral motivation being a subcategory of motivation generally. So why do we do what we do? Okay, following the great Julia Annas, on the whole, this is how philosophers go about it. So, taking the example of Medea, why does Medea do what she does? Why does she kill her children? Why does she, commit various murders along the way? Here, this Delacroix painting seems to suggest what is happening here is she's overcome with emotion. I mean, look at her eyes. There's a shadow over her eyes. She doesn't see clearly. Her clothes have kind of half fallen off. She's just escaped into some sort of cave and she's holding her kids and she's about to kill them. And clearly it's an emotional act. On the other hand, looking at the Frederick Sanders painting of Medea here, very different. She looks scarlet, yes, but she's mixing her poison and she's very rational, very composed. So it would seem that reason is the driving force here. And that's it. On the whole, this is how philosophers think about human behavior. This is old stuff, right? It kind of goes back to the classics. But even today, okay, we talk about internalism, externalism, and so on. We've got a little bit more in the way of vocabulary, but still our ways of explaining human behavior are sort of very primitive. Now, it's no great news that, of course, there's a biological basis for human behavior, but actually, as it happens, the two discourses don't really seem to come together properly. This is where one area where philosophy sort of fails to accurately take on board what otherwise philosophy does, the insights of science, and here we ought to look to Professor Sapolsky, who is a fantastic communicator of science, who can explain to us why we tend to do what we do. He explains to us what we know, and he also explains to us what we don't know. He explains to us the complexity of what is going on, and he also draws conclusions that are relevant not only to philosophy, they're relevant to all of us in terms of our moral judgments that we make, judgments of ourselves and of others, and also in the field of politics and legal matters in particular. So this is what we're giving him the award for. You should definitely check out his books. They're so fantastic, they're so well written, so accessible. Why zebras don't get ulcers in particular, and last year's book Behave, the biology of humans at our best and worst. So definitely very much recommended. And I'm going to hand back now to Rick.
Thank you, Annie. We have here the award for 2018 for Robert Sapolsky, and I'm going to say congratulations to Professor Sapolsky and to ask him to speak for a little while I shall now pass the microphone, no that's wrong, across to him in California, and if the technology works okay, then we'll, here he is. I'll pass him across. Hello. Oh, sorry, we don't have sound yet. Yeah, we don't seem to have any sound yet. We're working on it. I was going to say earlier on that I'm going to carry on doing stupid things all my life, but I just hope that I don't do anything too stupid during the Stupidity Award ceremony itself. But I've obviously pressed the wrong button or something. It was predictable. Here we are.
Hold the microphone.
We can't yet. Hold on. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. Then this one. Yeah. We have some. Could you try again? We'll see if it works this time. Professor Sapolsky, could you say something? Unfortunately not. Any ideas? Oh, I'm not sure that we might get a weird feedback thing, but we can try that. I wonder why that's not working. Should we try that? I can hear you, it's just we can't hear you through these speakers of Conway Hall. It's right next to the microphone.
Put the microphone there.
We think we have it.
We think we can hear you now, Robert. I'm so sorry about that.
With bated breath, we wait to see if this works.
Okay, suddenly I can am I audible? Okay, I still can barely hear anything being said at your end, but I'm not sure if I should proceed.
Give it a thumbs up.
Maybe if I should start speaking, somebody give me a thumbs up. Yes, I just got a thumbs up. Okay, let me know if I become completely inaudible. Let me start off by giving my thanks to you guys. This is a very cool honor to get. And the other thing is to note how utterly bizarre this is to be sitting in my living room here and getting to do this. Despite being a beautiful sunny day here in California, it would be nice to be with you in person, but nonetheless, thank you. Let's see, if somebody can just confirm I'm actually coming through at this point, that would be great.
Yes. Yes. Yes, you are. Do another thumbs up. You're live.
Okay. Okay, let us proceed then. What I wanted to talk about is, very briefly, a fairly which I think is a wonderful example of stupidity, and it's an example of it for, I think, some unexpected reasons. And it has to do with a tiny, tiny little minute fact about workings of the body that people didn't really understand in some way. And as a result, someone misinterpreted a finding in a study, invented a completely imaginary disease, and process killed about 20,000 people in the last century. What this has to do with is the gland in your body that will virtually guarantee none of you have thought about this. I barely ever give a thought to it. Something called the thymus gland. It sits in your throat. It's got something to do with your immune system. The purpose of this talk is one single fact, which is if you are under stress, your thymus gland shrinks. Smaller, it doesn't work as well. It has something to do with why when you're chronically stressed, your immune system doesn't work as well. The thymus gland shrinks during stress. And because nobody knew this fact late in the 19th century, this is where this disaster occurred. What it had to do with is one of the nightmare diseases of anybody who has ever had a baby, which is that horrible scenario where you have a perfectly healthy child, and you put your baby to bed one night, and you come back in the next morning, and your child has died. Every parent's nightmare. There's no explanation. Your child was healthy. What is now termed sudden infant death syndrome. People now know a bit about what sudden infant death syndrome is about. It has to do with some hypoxic events during the third trimester of pregnancy, some neurons in your brainstem that are a little bit vulnerable. Late 19th century, people first beginning to notice the disorder, and obviously nobody had a clue what was about. Sometimes perfectly healthy babies sleep and die during the night. So, late 19th century, someone who was at the absolute cutting edge of science at the time decided to do a study using a cutting edge technique, which was to examine the bodies of those who had died of sudden infant death syndrome, to autopsy them, to search every smidgen of these bodies and try to figure out, was there anything wrong? Was there anything different from what you would normally expect? And the people, the scientists, the pathologists who did this first study, went through these bodies, the autopsy materials, and saw nothing particularly out of the ordinary until they saw something amazing, which was if the corpses of sudden infant death syndrome kids, the thymus gland is bigger than normal. The thymus gland is enlarged. And here we come to this critical point. What I've just said is from the perspective of the scientist and the generations of pediatricians, From the perspective, the thymus gland was bigger than it should be in a newborn. Okay, what's the normal size of the thymus gland in a dead infant? This seems like a fairly bizarre question to ask, but what we had at this point was a pathologist who had been trained in what a normal thymus gland is supposed to look like in a 3-month-old child. And noticing that in these sudden infant death kids, the thymus gland was larger than normal. And thus we ask this question, what's a normal thymus gland in a dead 3-month-old? And what we come up with here is an interesting piece of medical history, which is, who's your normal dead 3-month-old? Who's a normal infant who at 3 months is dead and is being studied by a medical student, a doctor, a pathologist? And here we come to a critical fact, which is, throughout all of the history of medicine, doctors have learned what a normal body looks like by examining first poop people. Throughout all of medical history, there has been this enormous bias that autopsy material just got started with Henry VIII, who was the first to officially make a law that if you were being executed in England, afterward whatever they did to you, afterward your body would be turned over to the anatomists who would then dissect you. This was standard practice. Standard practice throughout the time, anyone who executed bodies were to anatomists and to medical students to learn what bodies are like. And who was being executed at that time? People for stealing a loaf of bread. Mostly executions were of poor. Now, what the suit gave rise to was a wonderful new profession to go into, which was you make a living being a resurrectionist. Common being a grave robber. These are people who would go dig up corpses and sell them to the anatomists, sell them to the docs and the medical students in the medical school who needed cadavers to learn from. So you're a resurrectionist, and you're big your bodies. You got a choice. You could go to a cemetery of the wealthy with gates that regard all of that, or you could go to some poor, impoverished field. You could go try to get the body of somebody wealthy buried 6 feet down in a coffin, or you could go to a field where corpses were just tossed in without coffins, buried under the ground. It was a lot easier to get the bodies to the poor. And by the early 19th century, if you were wealthy and you were planning to die at some point, and you were scared to witness that some resurrectionist would sell the corpse to the anatomist and you'd be dissected, you could invest in what was called a patent often, which was triple layered, so you could get through it very easily. You could pay to have your body put into what was called a dead house, which was where your body would be your arm barred for some days until you were so genteelly putrefied that nobody would dream of trying to dissect you, that they would bury you. Throughout this whole period, if your body was going to be dug up and sold to an anatomist and then studied by med students because you were poor and you were buried under circumstances where it was easy to get a body. Now, this period also gave rise to a bizarre footnote in American history, and this is something known as the Doctor's Rebellion. It was discovered that the were starving medical students at what was then called King's College, now Columbia University in New York, that the med students, being entrepreneurial in spirit, had decided to cut the middleman out of it and were discovered one by potter's heel digging up the corpses themselves to save some money. And this was rioting the population of New York. And before it over with God, it called keep trying to paint. A lot of medical school faculty had to take refuge in the home of Alexander Hamilton, with long tradition here of the bodies of the poor being the ones that physicians learned their anatomy from. Now, by
now, if you were an aging resurrectionist, there were even more options available to you. At the time, if you were dead and nobody had paid your medical costs because your family was poor, a resurrectionist could show up and pay them and head off with your body afterward. Or this was a period that gave rise to a wonderful new verb in England called burking. Burke and ancient resurrections, who hit on the much more clever idea of opening up a soup kitchen for the poor. And the poor would come in, and the right sort would be lured into the alleyway where good Mr. Burke would pop you over the head, kill you, and then deposit your body for a profit with the anatomists. Now, all of this mayhem finally needed some sort of regulation. It is all finally demonstrably regulated in 1832 when Parliament passed what was called the Anatomy Act, which was, if you died in a poorhouse, the body was returned to the anatomists. This was formalizing the terrorizing of the poor in this regard. This was formalizing. You were poor, it was free game for people to dissect your body afterward, and it was your kind of body that doctors would do their medicine from. So throughout the 19th century, 99% of autopsy for medical education came from people who had not been poor houses. Where we were before. It's the late 19th century. I'm just a researcher who's trying to figure out what death syndrome is about. You are dissecting the bodies of SIDS with nothing wrong with them. In other words, if some SID were middle class, who were well fed, who had been taken care of, and then this I'll just say about this corpse from another corpse. Here's where the catastrophic mistake is made. Recognize that a, quote, normal corpse was not a normal corpse. It was the body of an infant who had died of poverty, who had died of malnutrition, who had died of chronic infectious disease, who had died of gastrointestinal infection that caused the child who had lived its life amid the stress of poverty. A child who had lived its life amid stress, causing its thymus gland to shrink. But nobody knew this fact. And you are that pathway. Me on the bodies of the poor, and you have learned that what is in fact a thymus gland shrunk by the stress of poverty. What is a normal thymus? And you're the first human in the history of medicine to look at the thymus glands of infants who were middle class, stress of poverty, who were the first physician ever to look at unmortified thymus. You had no ability to recognize that this was sized one, and you've been trained on an abnormally shrunken one. You look at it and you say, oh my God, in SIDS, the thymus gland is larger than it's supposed to be. And what do you reasonable hypothesis. SIDS, sudden death syndrome, is caused when this abnormally large thymus gland and suffocates the infant. And thus we perfectly plausible hypothesis as to the cause of this disease, that by around 1910 or so, out of this had come excellent medical recommendation. If you were a parent of a newborn, and you were terrified that your child might die of this disease, sudden infant syndrome, we finally have some good medical advice for you as to how to protect your child. Go take your child and have their throat irradiated to shrink the thymus gland, just in case you were in danger of having one of these abnormally enlarged thymuses. And by 1910, the imaginary disease of having a larger than normal thymus gland had a name. It was called static fatties. And by 1910, the medical child's throat irradiated to make sure there's no danger that their this may be normally large, suffocate them to death one bite. And sitting next to the thymus gland was the thyroid gland. And once it irradiated in kids' throats enough, you had now vastly increased the risk of thyroid cancer, and before it was all over, with decades later, approximately 20,000 deaths due to cancer because of this wonderful medical discovery. It is, of course, stunning to go read about this. Pediatric textbook in 1930, that was the first one beginning to recognize the effects of stress on any of this, and began to say, wait a second, we have this backwards here, don't do this, don't irradiate kids' throats, and it wasn't until the 1960s that in the less medically enlightened parts of the United States, for example, that kids' throats were not regularly being irradiated to prevent this imaginary disease of status lymphatic. And I guarantee you, every time I've given a lecture about this, in one of the backwoods Iberia corners to the United States, usually somewhere down in Mississippi or something, somebody could pop me afterward and say, my God, I was a kid back in the late 1950s, our parents had our throats irradiated, and I got split, we've got thyroid cancer. So, as someone who for a living tries to push back that wall of ignorance about how bodies work, for a moving, horrifying, bracing experience to go over to my high school library and go 4 stories down to the sub-basement and look at these medical texts from 1915. Medical textbooks, pediatrics, filled groups of the abnormal large thymus glands, filled with all sorts of advice on the right radiation protocol to fit to thymus gland to avoid the risks of SIDS, to sit there and say, my God, the stuff that you know then. And we then look a half second later to say, my God, who 50 years from now is going to be looking at our textbooks and saying the exact same thing? Where to sum up, where does the stupidity come into this? Was it an act of stupidity not to know that the thymus gland did business? Came back to the 30s. Was it an act of stupidity to think that it was straightforward to come up with an answer as to how big an organ your body should be? Nah, that seems like a fairly straightforward question. Is it an act of stupidity to sort of tolerate the fact that if people can't live equally, they should at least get bisected equally? That's the stupidity that societal neglect. So where does the stupidity come into the story? For me, this one comes through every time I'm teaching. Every time I'm thinking about how to think about the causes of abnormality and help, where this stupidity comes in is the hubris, the ego, the whatever to come into thinking, I know what counts as normal. Be really damn sure and really damn cautious and check 14 times over again before you feel confident enough to pronounce this is what counts as normal. Because what the history of this disease shows is the minute you think what's normal, you've just destroyed your capacity to objectively look at supposed exceptions to that and instead see them for what they actually are. So on that note, I have no idea how much of this actually came through, but thank you for this report and thank you for your attention. And this is a singular, unique, pleasurable way for me to spend a morning here at my group. So thank you and good luck with all of you people philosophizing.
Professor Sapolsky for that talk. Not if you can hear me at all, if you'd be so kind. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, okay. I have a sense we were up against the limits of the technology this evening. Apologies for that, both to you, Professor Sapolsky, and also to you, the audience. And thank you for these slightly trying circumstances, giving such an interesting talk. Many thanks for that. And
well, thank you to all you guys.
Okay, well, thank you. We got a lot of it anyway. There were a few glitches. We got a lot of it. Many thanks, and good luck with all your future research. Oh, right. Okay, whoops. That concludes the awards. Thanks for bearing with us with our technological problems. I'll just say a few words in conclusion before we hand over to Tuk for the storytelling. This is the bit where I say thank you to everybody. In 1991, a big truck pulled up outside my house and delivered 2,000 copies of the first issue of Philosophy Now magazine. I piled up the boxes in my front room, went to bed, and by the next morning I was slightly dizzy and had a splitting headache. I hadn't realized that the ink on the freshly printed pages of 2,000 magazines would give off enough fumes to fill the entire house. I was a total beginner in magazine publishing, a hapless amateur with no training, no design skills, no equipment, no resources, and few contacts, and it probably showed. What saved Philosophy Now and allowed it to grow was that a lot of other people liked the basic idea of Philosophy magazine and thought there should be such a thing, and wanted to help it improve. So from the very beginning, Philosophy Now has always relied greatly on the goodwill and voluntary efforts of countless kind, intelligent, and idealistic people. And one of the great blessings of my life so far has been that I get to spend so much time dealing with kind, intelligent, and idealistic people. This is equally true of the Philosophy Now Festival. Each time we hold this festival, I'm more amazed than the last by the skill and kindness and inventiveness of so many people who help. So I would like to thank the following people and organisations. Firstly, Conway Hall for once again so generously allowing us to use almost the whole of their very fine building. And also to all the staff of Conway Hall for their help, including particularly Jacob, who has been the technician for the festival today, who's over there. From Philosophy Now's team, I'd like to thank Grant Barkley, the editor of Philosophy Now, who mostly puts the magazine together these days, and who travelled in from Oxford for this festival to give a talk. To Katie Baker, the editor of our new Ultimate Guide to Ethics, who ran the stall in the lobby along with Heidi Pinchovius. To Borodogan, our digital editor, for his calm head and technical solutions, and for live streaming for the first time experimentally part of the proceedings. To Emma Stacey for all her help behind the scenes. I would like to draw your particular attention to the efforts of Marcel for late night video editing on some of the videos we watched earlier on, and above all to my lovely wife Anja Steinbach, the main driving force behind the organisation of the festival. I'd like to thank all of the volunteers who did 2-hour shifts throughout the entire day directing and helping people. It was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'd like to help the philosophy organisations who took part, especially the Philosophy Foundation, who ran 4 workshops for children, and for all of the speakers today for their wonderful talks, workshops and games. And finally, and most importantly, I would like to thank all of you for coming to the 4th Philosophy Now Festival to listen, to discuss ideas, and to have fun with us. The fact that so many people want to think and want to get together with others to explore ideas is one of the more encouraging facts about 21st century society. Thank you all very much indeed.